Good morning, everyone. I'm your host, and today we're bringing you an explainer of the source material behind the world's absolutely most critical headlines. It is Thursday, April 30th, 2026, and we're delivering a comprehensive, deep dive analysis of the pivotal events that have completely redefined the last 24 hours. Our overarching theme today? A cascade of conflict. We're not just reading headlines to you, we are going to map out the precise, measurable ripple effects of a localized standoff and see exactly how they're crashing through the entire global system. Here's what's on the agenda for today's briefing. We'll trace the Middle East standoff as it triggers major economic fallout, forces the Fed's hand, sparks an AI nuclear pivot, completely rewires global supply chains, and establishes a brand new global reality. All right, Section 1, the Middle East standoff. A dual blockade. Let's dive right into our lead story. So, right now on the world stage, the strategic landscape in the Middle East is locked in a seriously high-stakes standoff. As of this morning, diplomatic efforts to secure a definitive peace agreement in Islamabad appear to be at a complete total standstill. And while a nominal ceasefire remains technically in place, the situation on the ground, well, it's decidedly grim. This dual blockade is unfolding incredibly fast. Immediately, the United States Navy is enforcing a strict embargo on Iranian ports. In an ongoing response to that, Tehran is maintaining a commercially non-functional environment in the Strait of Hormuz. They're doing this through the use of naval mines and outright threats of vessel seizures. And because both the U.S. and Iran are engaged in this fierce war of rhetoric, which has totally precluded any return to the negotiating table, kinetic operations remain at an absolute hair trigger. As an explainer of the facts on the ground, it's very clear that neither side's military posturing is softening even a little. And those shockwaves, they're already hitting home. That distant diplomatic friction has shockingly pushed domestic gasoline prices in the U.S. toward a four-year high of $4.18 per gallon. This matters so much because it shows just how quickly a localized diplomatic crisis translates into direct, unavoidable, everyday costs for all of us consumers. Section 2. Economic and fiscal fallout, the IMF downgrade. Moving from the diplomatic desk over to the economic fallout, the shadow of this prolonged conflict isn't just being felt at the pump anymore. It is now being formally quantified by the world's leading financial institutions. Just look at the IMF's latest projections. They show global growth stunted at just 3.1% for 2026. This is a direct result of the energy shocks and trade barriers stemming from the Middle East crisis. But in stark contrast to that sluggish growth, we're seeing a massive scaling up of global defense spending. We are talking about an average increase of 2.7 percentage points of GDP globally. That's huge. Because of this, IMF economists are officially warning of a really dangerous scenario, a stagflationary trap. Basically, if the conflict broadens, the global economy could face this persistent cycle of slow growth, high unemployment, and rising inflation. This state of fiscal dominance is absolutely crucial to understand. While massive defense outlays might give us a temporary boost to industrial activity, they are increasingly crowding out essential social spending, and that directly weakens the long-term fiscal sustainability of advanced and emerging economies alike. Section 3. The Fed holds steady. Powell's final pause. Pivoting to the realm of finance, central bankers are definitely caught in the crossfire of all this economic pressure. Just yesterday, Wednesday, April 29th, the Federal Reserve concluded its final policy meeting under the supervision of Chair Jerome Powell. Breaking down the numbers from that pivotal meeting, you can see it was a fractured room. The committee voted 8-4 to keep interest rates on pause, so they're maintaining the benchmark range of 3.5 to 3.75%. 4 members dissented, but the majority judged that inflation is currently running just way too hot right now to justify a rate cut. Central bankers are facing an incredibly complex challenge here. High crude oil prices from the standoff are keeping inflationary pressures uncomfortably elevated, even as the broader economic fallout threatens to cool down the labor market. Now, what's truly staggering here is this 89% consensus probability. Financial markets are essentially betting with an 89% likelihood that the Fed's benchmark interest rate will remain exactly where it is all the way through December. Investors are taking one look at the geopolitical landscape and concluding, yep, inflation will remain high enough to discourage any rate cuts for the rest of the year. Let's map out how this plays out over the coming months for the Federal Reserve. We had Powell's final policy meeting on April 29th. Market participants are now closely watching the upcoming leadership transition, since Kevin Warsh is widely expected to succeed Powell on May 15th. And as we just mentioned, the market is bracing for a prolonged, restrictive holding pattern under incoming Chair Warsh, projecting literally no relief on rates through December 2026.
Moving on to Section 4, AI's nuclear energy pivot, securing digital power. Shifting our focus entirely over to the technology sector now. In response to all this global instability and the wild energy cost fluctuations, private enterprises aren't just sitting around waiting. They're executing massive infrastructure pivots to secure the physical energy required for the next generation of artificial intelligence.
Take a moment to really absorb this number. By the end of 2026, AI data center electricity consumption is projected to more than double, exceeding 1,000 terawatt hours. 1,000. The sheer scale of this energy demand is almost difficult to comprehend. These facilities absolutely require on-site 24/7 reliable power to function. They can't afford blips. And this brings us to a landmark development in the tech industry that changes absolutely everything. We are rapidly shifting from an old paradigm, relying on vulnerable, geopolitically exposed global power grids, to a totally new reality of utilizing on-site nuclear microreactors for complete energy independence. It's wild. Just this week, a critical proof-of-concept demonstration successfully used a research reactor to power a high-performance GPU node. Hyperscalers aren't just adapting. They are actively attempting to decouple from the global grid entirely. The big takeaway here? Technology leadership now demands complete energy independence. Section 5. Rewiring global supply chains, the physical cost. Over at the logistics desk, the physical arteries of global commerce are undergoing a real-time, completely permanent rewiring. The disruption metrics we're seeing are stark. The ongoing crisis in the Strait of Hormuz has effectively erased 25% of the world's seaborne oil trade and 20% of global liquefied natural gas from their traditional routes. And because shipowners are fully anticipating months of continued disruption, major carriers have integrated this massive Cape of Good Hope detour into their global operations. This single shift adds roughly 14 whole days to standard voyage times. The logistical fallout from this is profound. The industry has effectively abandoned the cheap, just-in-time models of the past. It's just not viable anymore. In their place, industries are adopting high-cost regional buffer strategies. Consequently, container shipping rates have seen significant increases across the board. As a necessary countermeasure to stabilize these massive price swings, the 32 members at the International Energy Agency are releasing 400 million barrels of strategic oil. But the ultimate reality, as logistics professionals have been warning us, is that the era of guaranteed secure maritime corridors, that's effectively over. Finally, Section 6, a new global reality, the anchor's take. As we conclude today's explainer, let's synthesize these interconnected shifts into a clear picture of our new reality. Based on the trajectory we've mapped out today, my final prediction is this. Even if a formal diplomatic breakthrough is reached in Islamabad tomorrow, these structural changes to global logistics and the massive premium placed on energy independence in the technology sector are completely permanent. The harsh lesson here is that reliance on singular maritime choke points is a liability that can no longer be ignored. Through the remainder of 2026, we are going to see a continued, aggressive move toward regionalized, self-sustaining industrial and digital hubs. So I leave you with this provocative thought to consider as you step into your day. How rapidly will your industry need to adapt to this permanent shift toward regionalized, self-sustaining hubs? The global landscape has shifted fundamentally, and adaptation is no longer an option. It is an absolute necessity. Thank you so much for joining me for this global briefing explainer. Stay informed, stay focused, and I will see you next time.